Hey everyone, Andre here. So earlier this year, I had the chance to travel to Japan with my brother, and we had an awesome time. And I want to take advantage of that experience to put together a helpful video for all of you guys. See, there are already a lot of videos and articles about essential Japanese travel phrases, top 10 Japanese words you need to know to travel to Japan. But I found that those videos and articles often list words that I actually didn't find necessary to know, or are missing words I feel like are necessary to know. So this video is going to be basically my take on those essential Japanese travel phrases based on my own experiences traveling to Japan in 2019 and 2023. And hopefully it will come in handy to some of you who are traveling to Japan soon. But first, a disclaimer. My experience traveling to Japan is limited. It's basically limited to the cities of Tokyo, Kyoto, Hiroshima, and Osaka. So in other words, the big cities that are like the most popular with overseas tourism and are therefore more accommodating of non-Japanese speakers. So if you plan to travel elsewhere, perhaps to less touristy areas of Japan, my tips here may not cover everything you need. But stay tuned to the end of the video because I'm going to be recommending some other YouTube channels that I think may be able to help you out. Also, I'm going to be linking a PDF cheat sheet down in the description below of everything I talk about in this video, so be sure to check that out. Now, for those of you who don't know any Japanese whatsoever, we're going to start this video with the top 4 absolutely, positively essential Japanese travel phrases. That's right, just 4. Narrowed it down. If you memorize just these 4 phrases and literally nothing else from this video, I think you should still be able to get by in Japan. And these phrases in English are excuse me, please, no thank you, and thank you. Excuse me in Japanese is sumimasen. You can use this to get a waiter's attention at a restaurant, sumimasen, or a clerk or cashier's attention at a store, sumimasen. And of course, you can also use this if you, say, accidentally bump into someone or you're like trying to get through a crowd. Sumimasen, sumimasen. It also works as a kind of a light apology. Sumimasen. Please in Japanese is onegai shimasu. When you're ordering food at a restaurant, you can point to the item you want on the menu and say onegai shimasu. Or you can say kore onegai shimasu, which means this, please. If you're buying something at a store and the cashier offers you a plastic bag, you can say onegai shimasu to mean yes, please. Onegai shimasu can also mean something like thank you in advance or if you please. So for example, if you're asking someone to take a photo of you, when you hand over your camera to them, you can say onegai shimasu. No thank you in Japanese is daijoubu desu. If a cashier offers you a bag and you don't want it, you can say daijoubu desu to mean no thank you. But actually, daijoubu desu is closer in meaning to I'm okay. And just like the phrase I'm okay in English, you can use it to politely reject an offer as in I'm okay. Or you can use it to say you're literally okay. So for example, if you trip and fall somewhere, but you're good and you can still get up, someone might come up and ask you, daijoubu desu ka? Are you okay? And you can respond with daijoubu desu. I'm okay. Another example is if you meet someone with like a pet, they might ask you something like, inu wa daijoubu desu ka? Which means, are you okay around dogs? And you can respond with, daijoubu desu. I'm okay with dogs. Finally, thank you in Japanese is arigatou gozaimasu. Now, technically, you can just say arigato, but arigatou gozaimasu is extra polite, and it's what I use 99% of the time. I said thank you to anyone while I was in Japan. And those were the top 4 absolutely, positively essential Japanese travel phrases. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty. So, for the rest of the video, I'm going to be talking about all the common Japanese phrases I heard in Japan, particularly during customer service interactions, and how to respond to them. Also, what to do if you are confused, didn't hear what they said, or don't know how to respond. And I'm going to break the section up into the likely places you will be when you're in Japan, starting with the airport. And the good news is you don't need any Japanese to get around an international airport in Japan, at least in my experience. Most signs are going to be both in Japanese and in English, if not in other languages, and most workers at airports are able to speak some English. In fact, I think they probably speak better English than most other customer service staff in Japan, since they're dealing with foreign customers day in and day out. Now, let's say you make it out of the airport, but now you need to get to your hotel. Well, you'll probably have to ride a train or a bus. So what Japanese do you need to get around a bus stop or a train station? Well, the good news is at train stations, most signs are written in both Japanese and English, and train announcements are almost always spoken in Japanese and English as well. You might even hear other languages like Chinese and Korean. On the other hand, buses may be a little bit more iffy. It could just be my specific experience, but sometimes what I found is that it might be necessary to actually know the kanji characters of the name of the bus stop you're heading to when you're like looking for the right bus to get on. That said, once you get on to the right bus announcements, again from my experience, are always spoken in both English and Japanese. Now what do you say when the bus arrives at your stop? You need to get off, but the bus is super crowded and you're having trouble like getting through the crowd to get off the bus. Well, when you're squeezing through a crowd, what I've said and what I've heard other Japanese people say is sumimasen, so excuse me, or shitsureishimasu, which means excuse me, but like maybe a little bit more polite version of that, and orimasu, which means I'm getting off here. Sumimasen, orimasu, shitsureishimasu, orimasu. Okay, now you've made it to your hotel, but what now? How do you check in? So some hotels have a self-check-in/checkout kiosk, and in those cases just select English as your language and follow the on-screen instructions. If you're checking in at the counter with service staff, hotel staff, just know that probably the first thing, or one of the first things they're going to ask is to see your passport, and the rest of the interaction should be easy to navigate, as they'll probably just be handing you your room key and maybe giving you a little description of the facilities of the hotel. Now again, I've only stayed at like business type hotels, not like resorts or anything fancy, so the check-in process could be different at other places or more involved in those kinds of places. I don't know. But again, stay tuned to the end of the video because I'm going to be giving you some resources that may help you with that. Now once you've taken a short break in your hotel room, you're probably hungry, right? Let's talk about restaurants. So the first thing you're most likely going to be asked the moment you step foot in a restaurant is "Nanmei sama desu ka?" As you might guess, this means how many people. Now, strictly speaking, you don't actually have to answer this verbally. You could just hold up however many fingers of the number of people in your party. But let's just say you want extra credit. You can say, 1人、2人、3人、4人、5人. Now, once you tell a server how many people are in your party, the next thing they'll do is show you to your seat. Or they may tell you to just pick any seat you like. So if you hear something along the lines of 空いてる席どうぞ or 好きな席どうぞ, keywords seki and dozo, it means you can sit down at any open table. By the way, probably don't have to spell this out, but not every worker at every restaurant is going to say the exact same thing every time. So all the phrases I tell you about throughout this video may not be exactly what you end up hearing in Japan, but as long as you listen for those key words, you should be fine. Now let's talk about ordering. So just like in the US, different restaurants have different ordering systems. Some restaurants have you make your orders on a tablet screen. In most cases where this happens, you can just switch the tablet language to English. At some restaurants or cafes, you have to order at the counter. Some restaurants, especially like ramen restaurants and smaller hole-in-the-wall restaurants, you may have to order and pay for your food before you even enter the store via like a ticket machine. And of course, in some restaurants, you need to call a waiter over to your table to give your order verbally. So in Japan, it's okay to like raise your voice a bit to get a waiter's attention. Just wave at any waiter and say, "Sumimasen," or some restaurants have like a waiter call button on the table. In any case, once they've arrived, you can say, "Chumon onegaishimasu," which means "order please," or "ready to order." To order, just point out the item you want on the menu and say, "Kore kudasai," this please. You can also say, "Kore onegaishimasu," or if you want to be real casual, you could just say, "Kore de." Of course, if you know how to say the name of the item, you can sub "kore" for that name, the name of the item. So for example, "tonkotsu ramen kudasai," Now let's say you want to order multiple of the same item. You would say, これ一つください. One of this, please. これ二つください. Two of this, please. これ三つください. Three of this, please. これ四つください. Four of this, please. これ五つください. Five of this, please. Now, if you want to order several different items, just point to each item and say これと. To means and. And when you're done, say 以上です, which means that will be all. これとこれとこれ以上です. Another thing I forgot to mention is, say your friend orders something and you decide you just want to get the same thing. You can tell the waiter 同じで, which means I'll have the same. Now, more than likely, just like in other places, the waiter will repeat your order back to you and ask for confirmation. The key phrase to listen for is, once they finish listing out your order, they'll end with で間違いないんでしょうか? Or is that correct? To which you simply respond はい, meaning yes. 豚骨ラーメンと味噌ラーメンととんかつで間違いないんでしょうか? はい. Now, once you finish eating and you're ready to pay, at a lot of restaurants in Japan, the waiter will leave your check on the table for you without you needing to ask for it. In those cases, just take your check up to the front register and pay for your meal there. If you haven't received your check yet, just call a waiter over and say お会計お願いします, which means check please. すみません. お会計お願いします. Now, when you're up at the register ready to pay, you may want to let the cashier know how you'll be paying. So if you're paying with cash, you can say 現金で. For credit card, you can say クレジットカードで. And for IC card, you can say IC カードで. By the way, this is applicable for when you're paying for anything, anywhere, not just restaurants. And also, this isn't always necessary. Usually they'll understand how you plan on paying once you take out your cash or IC card without you saying anything. But I'm just saying, I've run into situations where, for example, I whip out my US credit card and they just get confused for a moment because they don't recognize it. But in any case, once you finish paying, a good thing to say as you leave any restaurant in Japan is thank you for the meal. In Japanese, that's ごちそうさまです. And depending on the size and format of the restaurant, you might be saying it to a cashier, or to a waiter, or even to the chef himself. ごちそうさまです. And before we move on to the next section, I want to remind you that everything I talk about this video will be in a PDF cheat sheet that I made in the description below. I even put in an extra page where you can write your own notes or type out your own notes, because again, I know this video is not going to be perfect for everybody. There's going to be stuff that you are going to find in other videos or other articles that you want to have written in your notes. So definitely check that out, and again, stay tuned to the end of the video where I'm going to be recommending you some other YouTube channels that you might find helpful as well. Okay, so the next section is stores. Obviously, there's a lot of different types of stores in Japan. Full disclosure, I mainly went to convenience stores, bookstores, and anime goods stores. So like clothing stores, for example, may use other key phrases that I don't mention here. Of course, the main part of any store where you'll be interacting the most with customer service staff is at checkout. That is unless you go to self-checkout, but honestly, from what I've seen, those aren't actually that common outside of convenience stores. So first off, when you get to the front of a checkout line, you'll likely hear a cashier say something to the effect of 次のお客様どうぞ, or even just どうぞ, which just means next customer please. And obviously that's your cue to walk up to the register with your stuff. Now, for most of a typical cashier interaction, you don't really have to pay too much attention. You know, you lay down your stuff, they scan it, they tell you the total amount of money you owe, which will also usually be displayed on a screen in front of you. You give them your payment method of choice, and they give you your change and your receipt, and you're on your way. But there are two very, very common things cashiers at almost every store will ask you during this interaction. Number one is 袋いりますか? Keyword 袋. Would you like a plastic bag? If yes, you can say はいお願いします to mean yes. If you don't want a bag, you can say 大丈夫です to mean I'm good or no thanks. Or you could say いらないです which means no need. The number two most common question a cashier may ask you is something along the lines of ポイントカードお持ちでしょうか? Do you have a point card? So a point card is just like another word for like a loyalty card, rewards card, or membership card. Chances are, if you're a foreign traveler and not a resident of Japan, you don't have one and you probably don't need one. So when they ask you, ポイントカードお持ちでしょうか? or ポイントカードよろしいですか? you can just say 持ってないです, meaning I don't have one. Also note that ポイントカード may go under different names, like I've heard T ポイントカード or even Rakuten カード. So the main keyword you're listening for really is just カード. Another common question you'll get from cashiers, but specifically at bookstores, is こちらブックカバーをおかけしますか? which means, would you like a cover for these books? So oftentimes at bookstores in Japan, in addition to being offered a plastic bag, cashiers may also offer you a paper jacket for your books to protect them. So in response, again, you can say お願いします to mean yes please, or 大丈夫です or いらないです to mean no thank you. Finally, one of the last questions you'll probably get from cashiers is レシートご利用ですか? Keyword レシート. Would you like your receipt? Again, you can say お願いします or 大丈夫です. And that's it for stores. So for this last main section of the video, I'm going to be giving you some bonus phrases that may come in handy during your trip as well. First up, you probably already know these, but why not? Let's just review the common Japanese greetings. So obviously we all know こんにちは, which means hello or good afternoon. In Japanese, good morning is おはようございます, and good evening is こんばんは. If you ever need to say I'm sorry, you can say ごめん. Or to be more polite, ごめんなさい. If you see something and you don't know what it is, you can say これは何ですか? これは何ですか? If someone says or explains something to you and you didn't quite catch it, you can say すみません, もう一度お願いします, which means sorry, could you say that one more time please? すみません, もう一度お願いします. If you just want to say I don't understand, you can say すみません, わかりません. This one came in handy when a Japanese person mistook me for a local and trying to ask me for directions. So I had to say すみません, わかりません. On the other hand, if you totally understand what they said, you should say はい、わかりました. Now, a quick anecdote. So when I was in Japan, I ran into a few situations where the staff had to explain the rules to me. So for example, I went to an Ichiban Kuji shop, which is it's like an anime merch lottery. So you buy a ticket in exchange for a random prize basically. And the cashier had to explain to me that this was random and I wouldn't be able to pick the exact item that I wanted. Also at izakaya sometimes, or bars, sometimes they'll charge you what's called a fixed table charge in addition to whatever you're paying for your meal and your drinks. And usually the waiter will explain that to you before you order. So in those situations, when they're done explaining the thing to you, it's best to say はい、わかりました or just はい. Because in some of those cases, I accidentally said 大丈夫です instead. Because in my mind, I was thinking they were implicitly asking if I was okay with the extra charge or the weird rules or whatever. So I said 大丈夫です to mean, in my mind, yes, I'm okay with that. But that's not how they took it. Usually that ended up just confusing the staff more because to them it sounded like I was saying, I'm okay, as in, no thanks. So yeah, be careful with 大丈夫です. In those situations, you should just say はい or はい、わかりました. If you need directions, you can ask someone, blank はどこですか? Where is blank? Or you can bring it up on your smartphone and just say, これはどこですか? Where is this? By the way, bathroom in Japanese is お手洗い or トイレ. Say you go to a store and you want to know if they have a specific item. You can ask, blank ありますか? Do you have blank here? Or again, bring it up on your phone and ask, これありますか? Do you have this here? And finally, the last phrase I'm going to give you guys is 無料 or free, as in $0. We all like free stuff. So if you ever hear or see this phrase in Japan, you know something is free and you should head in that direction. Before we end the video, I want to give you one last piece of advice and some recommendations. And that piece of advice is, before you go on your trip, memorize hiragana and katakana. As you might already know, the written Japanese language is made of 3 sets of characters. The 2 simplest are called hiragana and katakana, or kana for short, which consist of 48 characters each, with which you can spell out every Japanese word. Think of the kana as the Japanese alphabet, if you ever decide to take, or if you have taken a Japanese 101 class, memorizing the kana is usually one of the first things you're expected to do. And I highly recommend doing this before you arrive in Japan because it will unlock the ability to read signs and recognize the names of places, menu items, etc. So to state the obvious, of course, you're not going to be fluent just by memorizing the alphabet. You obviously need to also learn kanji, vocabulary, and grammar. But if you can at least read hiragana and katakana, you will be able to sound out simple lines of text, which I think is a huge bonus because you'll be less reliant on English translations, English signs, and you'll feel like you're engaging with the local culture more on a deeper level. Again, just being able to read the names of places, station names, signs, product names, menu items, when they're written out in kana and hiragana katakana, it's gonna make you more prepared than most other foreign travelers. Oh, and knowing at least how to read hiragana and katakana will make these next few recommendations a little easier, because I know this video isn't going to be perfect for every viewer, so I want to direct you all to a couple other YouTube channels that I find super helpful. So the first one is a channel called Moshi Moshi Yusuke, and that's written in hiragana. And he has a series of videos where he basically films himself going out and interacting with staff at various places like stores, convenience stores, restaurants. So these videos are super helpful in getting the vibe of everyday life in Japan, while also hearing and seeing real life examples of all the customer interaction stuff that I've been talking about throughout this whole video. Plus, Yusuke subtitles his videos in both English and hiragana. The second channel I'm recommending is called Akane Teki Kyoshitsu, and that's written in both hiragana and kanji, I think. So she also has vlog style videos where she goes out and films herself interacting with staff and teaches Japanese as well. So her videos, I will say, have subtitles in various languages, including English, but the Japanese subtitles are not just in hiragana and katakana, they also have kanji, so beware of that, but I do find her channel super helpful. My final recommendation is for those of you who can't read any Japanese, you can't read hiragana, katakana, or kanji, whatever, and that's a channel, Ninjapanese. So this channel is more lesson based, so they don't actually go out to film real life interactions, unfortunately, but they do have location based lesson videos like must know phrases at a supermarket, at a hotel check-in, at convenience stores, etc. And these videos have English, Japanese, and Romaji subtitles, so they're super beginner friendly. And just to get you guys started on those other channels, I made a playlist of some of my favorite videos from them. You can find that as well in the description, along with the PDF cheat sheet of everything I talked about in this video. Check that out as well. And with that, that's all I have for you today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you found this video helpful. I'm wishing you all safe travels and awesome trips to Japan in the near future. If you have any questions, corrections, or comments, as always, please leave them down below. I always try to read everything. And also, I don't usually say this, but if you like the video, press the like button, subscribe if you want. I have a couple more videos based around my recent trip to Japan coming soon, so be on the lookout for those. And yeah, that's it. I'm looking at my notes. That's all I have for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Arigatou gozaimasu. Have an awesome day.